Hey, everybody. I pray that everybody is doing well and is excited that this is the day that the Lord has made. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Could you be mine? Would you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? I always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I always wanted to live in the neighborhood, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Could you be mine? Would you be mine? Y'all know I stayed up late and watched Saturday Night Live. That's Mr. Robinson from old Eddie School, Eddie Murphy. Saturday Night Live. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our sermon chat. We're gonna ask you grab those phones, share this feed on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live. Text someone, invite them to join the conversation as we chatted up about our sermon, or as we chatted up about faith matters in general. And so we're glad to have you.
Good morning, everybody. What a blessing that you're here joining us. I'm just grateful. So we look forward to hearing from you. Please do go ahead and make sure that you reach out to us in the comments. We love your questions and the dialogue. So let's get it.
I'm sharing the feed right now. And want you to do the same, please, as we share about the sermon or faith matters in general. As you know, we're in a series. For those who don't know, we're in a series on Psalm 46. Today's sermon was verses. And I looked at verse 7 in particular. And then next week, we'll finish the sermon series with verses 8 through 11. And so we want to take your questions about the sermon that we're in the series. These are uncertain times. We're not just limited to talking about the sermon, but we can talk about faith matters in general. So please share your questions with us. Reverend, you got some early questions that people didn't want to put in the chat, but they want to sit on the side?
I do. I'm just trying to get this shared. My phone is acting up this morning.
Okay.
All right, Pastor, you ready? The first question is, the church is referenced to be the city of refuge where God dwells.
Mm-hmm.
When we abandon the church, are we also abandoning our refuge / protection?
I think yes. I think the church has not done the greatest of job of helping people understand that it is a refuge. It is a place of protection. It is a place of safety. And because of that, we have shunned people who should be looking for safety and protection from us. And we've also turned people off who have been looking for protection and safety as well. And so I think the church has been its own worst enemy in our inner fighting, our bickering. We're sending angels from Africa to protect a certain candidate.
We ain't doing that. We ain't doing that.
We are now.
I'm not claiming it.
We are now asking God to go against God's character and nature by having God to go against the will of God's people when God never. You often say this and you articulate it in a more effective way than I do about God will never make us go against our own violate our free will. And so that's what we're doing now. And they have great platforms. And for people who are people don't read, study to show themselves approved, they'll be hoodwinked and bamboozled and that type of stuff. You want to add anything, Brett?
Yeah, I want to say that the psalmist does understand in that context that the presence of God is in the temple. I think we have to recognize that where we are as the people of God, we can gather together, but the Old Testament was very much about locating God's presence in a place.
Mm-hmm.
Even though God showed them throughout the Old Testament that he was with them no matter where, anywhere they were. So this question about abandoning God's protection, I want to be careful with that because the church, to your point, may not always be what we are called to be as support of each other, to help each other know the refuge and the God of the refuge. However, God is our refuge wherever we choose to allow God to be and acknowledge God to be our refuge, whether we are in the church or not. God tells us, though, in the New Testament that we are the body
Mm-hmm.
of Christ, and that makes us the church. And that, as you said in your sermon, that when we're together, there's something about that takes us even deeper, I guess, like you could say, into the things of
Mm-hmm.
God. God in the New Testament not only helps us understand that, but says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. So, um, theologically, no, you're not abandoning, but in practice, you could be walking away from the strengthening power of the body collective.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then follow up to that question is first question from Facebook. Why do you think there's so much infighting within different groups? Well, we've got to look at historically. There's always been infighting in different groups, from the original, from going back to the Old Testament throughout the New Testament, and even on into today. So that's always been the case. That always will be the case until we get to the other side of the Jordan. Till we get to heaven where the streets are paved with gold. So, because of that, we don't need to get alarmed. We just need to understand and making sure that we're always listening to God's voice. And when we're listening to God's voice, we'll always be on the right side of history.
Yeah, and can I just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, were you
Go
finished?
ahead.
Part of the why is because we live in a fallen world and we are all humans and we are all part of that fallen humanity. And even when we say yes to Christ and we get a new nature, sometimes we let that old nature dominate. And I think it's in James where he says the reason why we have conflict is because we want our way. But when we, to your point, when we align ourselves with God's will and God's way by listening to God, talking to God, and dying to self. Those are
Mm-hmm.
ways that God doesn't say we won't have conflicts, but He shows us a way through the conflicts, a way over the conflicts, which is what He does with everything as we're journeying through this fallen world and broken humanity. God doesn't just wave a magic wand and change everybody, but God teaches us how we can live in the new nature that He's given us, and that when we do that together collectively, that's called the kingdom.
And this is a great follow up to the second question from Facebook. We got all questions from Facebook. Come on YouTube, y'all come through. The nation is in such a divide politically, socially, and even spiritually. How do we pull ourselves together and come together as one, just as God wanted us to be? One of the things that I said in the sermon is that this is the greatest opportunity for the church to be the church. The church has to model that we don't necessarily have to agree with each other on every issue, but some things we can agree on, and we should not have to. We should not have to send Twitter bombs, and we should not have to denigrate each other for those type of things, because we can agree to disagree and do it in love. I think that's what the church should be modeling. I think also the church and believers in particular, we have to be careful what we're modeling on social media, what we're modeling at work. I often say this in sermons is that believers should be the best workers. But oftentimes, because I've worked in various places, believers are the worst workers. They're the ones that get to work late all the time. They the ones complain. They are the ones uh, who always trying to get over, leaving work. You know you don't supposed to leave work at 4:30, but oh well, I left at 4:15. Or you doing stuff for the church at work, talking about I'm doing it for the Lord. When no, boo boo, you got a home, do stuff at home. And so we've got to make sure we're doing those things. And how do we pull ourselves together? We are the best representatives of God by what we do, not just by what we say and how we treat people. And when we do that, the Bible says they'll know that we are Christians by our love. How much love are we showing? You want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, we can debate without dividing. We can debate without demonizing, and that
Mm-hmm.
needs to happen in the church and also in the way the church and church people, well, God's people, um, act and participate in the wider community.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important because what the political landscape right now has people demonized. Um, and the church has done the same thing over the centuries. But what we can learn is that while we can have different perspectives on things and different ways to do things, Baptists do things differently than Methodists, but for one example, but like you said in your sermon, but there's one faith, one Lord, one baptism, and we don't debate that, we don't divide over that, and we can find common ground with our enemies, and even if they don't meet us there, God calls us to love them regardless.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true. So, all right. So, those who are just joining us, we are in our sermon chat where we encourage everyone to post their questions. We are excited about you joining us on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, on our website, and on our app. We do this after every sermon, and we do this as an opportunity to share, to dialogue, to debate. We've got a question all the way, Reverend, from Germany.
I'm loving that we're getting so many questions
and so
this morning.
I'm grateful for what are some practical ways to pause in our daily lives. Selah. You guys, I'm gonna let you start.
I think the first thing is to make up your mind that you're going to do it. And another really good, I've learned this, another practical way to actually follow through with what you say you're going to do is put it on your calendar. And then how you choose to spend that practical time of pausing can vary. We call these, there are some spiritual disciplines or spiritual practices that allow that. So one of them might be silence and solitude. I guess those are two, but they usually go together. Put time on your calendar where you can have silence and solitude, and you do that. Just as it implies, you sit somewhere by yourself and in silence, and you're there presenting yourself to the Lord and being open to whatever God wants to say, how God wants to move. And I just want to caution you that if you do that and you fall asleep, that's okay, because it probably means that you need some rest, and you may need to bank a little bit of that Sabbath rest before you can then move into the silence and solitude and hear from the Lord. Prayer is another one. You can study the Word. You can write a prayer journal, another way of praying. Meditation.
Yep. Some people, it's a place. So one of our mentors has a space in her home that's her space of where she reconnects with God. For some folks, it's water. Not being in the water, but being close enough to the water to see the water come in and go out. Watching the sun set and watching the sun rise. And so we have to find being outside. We have to find a place where we take those pauses. No internet, no TV, no phone, no social media. That we just pausing and reflecting. I said that at the end of the sermon because Selah is at the end of verse 3, at the end of verse 7, and at the end of verse 11. In Psalm 46, and you got to take some time to just pause, reflect, pause. You don't have to always say something. Pause, think, consider, ponder. Okay, all right, y'all. So we've got a few more moments. We need some more questions. Facebook has been on swole. YouTube, come on through. We want to have some questions, a dialogue as we continue. As you see. We're in this series. These are uncertain times. The sermon title was Verses. If you did not watch Worship with Us virtually, I encourage you to go back. I pray that the sermon bless you. It blessed me preaching it, blessed me writing it. And so I pray that it blesses you. And I pray this entire series that you'll go and check out the entire series through this month of November. These are uncertain times. I pray that you've been blessed. All right, so come through. Y'all know I'm come through Facebook, come through YouTube, come through. Let me check the phone and see if we got any side questions, because you know some folks send a text on the side or send questions on email. So we don't have any questions on email or text. So come through. Reverend, I think you got some pre-lob questions, some people who lobbed us some alley-oops before we got started. So when we get the game rolling, I could just go and dunk it. Our kids like basketball. So, all right.
Okay, this one is also continuing in Selah.
Mm-hmm.
3 times in the psalm, we see Selah, Selah. And even with the psalmist telling us that God will fight these battles, we're still reminded 3 times. This seems to allude to our trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
God will fight for you, but how can the people of God abandon their trust issues fully in order to receive the fullness of God?
That's a lot, right? Let's break that down. It's 3 points. Give me 3 points.
Well,
Give me
really,
the first
it's
question.
okay.
No, I'm just playing.
3. They make this question makes an assertion or comes to a conclusion that we're reminded 3 times because we got to Selah, because we got trust issues.
Right, we do.
How can the people of God abandon the trust issues and fully, in order to fully receive the fullness of God? That's the main question.
Okay, you start and then I'm gonna come through.
Well, I think that part of what Selah does is kind of it's a time to hit the reset button to remember who God is. We've been saying this quite a bit lately in Sisters Bible Study Takeover, that you have to know who you are and whose you are. In order to know who you are, you have to know whose you are. And that really is based in knowing who God is. And those Selah moments are not just about us trying to connect to God, but they're also about us resetting what we know about God, setting aside things that we have decided about God that are not in line with God's character, refamiliarizing ourselves with God, and looking up and considering Him, who He is, what He's about. He is Immanuel. He is God on our side, and He fights our battles. But who is it that's doing all of that?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we Selah moments happen, and trust happens when we are certain about the identity of God. So the analogy that just jumped in my head, like we know you know who your daddy is or your father figure is. I just started thinking, who's your daddy? And my mind went a whole bunch of different places. But if someone is identified as your father or your mother, that identity speaks to some things that you can trust. I knew it was coming. See, my mind is already going where you gonna go. I'm in.
Who's your daddy?
But that identity.
Who's your daddy?
That identity speaks to us in shorthand some things that we know about daddy or mama. And so just the word itself furthers the trust, because so much of the identity of the person is wrapped up in that word. When it comes to God, we don't always give God that. We don't always give God that God is love and God is caring and God is with us. We got some other stuff that we sometimes identify with God. And just like we don't let anybody tell us differently about our mamas and our daddies. We need to be that way about God. And,
holy God.
And we can trust God when we get to that point where we are steadfast, unmovable, in understanding who God is. Yeah.
In the work of the Lord. All right. Give me that second part of that question.
That was...
No, it was the second part of that.
No, the essence of the question, there was a whole bunch of preamble to get there, but the second part of the question, the question was, how can the people of God abandon their trust issues fully in order to receive the fullness of God?
I think the only way we're going to be able to trust God more is, and y'all may not want to hear this, but it's like castor oil. It don't taste good, but it's good for you. Only way you're going to learn to trust God more is in those troubling times to trust God more. The only way you're going to learn how much power you have is to understand in pain that you do have power. So you got to have pain, you got to have trouble to get trust. That's the only way. I don't know if you can find trust without trouble. Because those are the times when we're drawn closer to God. And it's not that we're inviting trouble to our lives. It's that we're going to act and react differently when trouble comes.
Can I just tweak that,
Okay.
add a little something to
All right.
that? Because
Okay.
I know that that's true because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
But for people who haven't yet hit those places where you know that it was only the Lord who was carrying you through, I think that along with trouble, and maybe this is just trouble as an extension of what I want to add to what you're saying, the only way that you trust God more is when you will receive the truth. And truth comes before trouble. So let me say it this way. I live in a fallen world, but if I don't believe that truth, then how can I trust God? Because I'm going to look around for all kinds of other things to trust. I'm going to think that maybe I can control things going on. So I think that there's a way to trust God even before the trouble comes, but that is when you face the truth. The truth is I can't control things. The truth is I'm a sinner. The truth is I live in a fallen world.
Okay.
The truth is I can't save myself. So even before the trouble comes, I have, in fact, when we realize, the earlier we realize this, the better, but it's never too late because the Lord can save us right where we are. But the earlier we realize I can't do it, I need a Savior, that truth is what then will lend to trust. And how do we get the fullness of what God has for us? Trusting Him fully. And that means being truthful with ourselves about our limitations as humans, our limitations given the world that we're living in, and our limitations given that the enemy is always there trying to tempt us.
So let me ask you this question, Reverend. Do you feel that the only way trust can be gained even more is in trouble times, or you believe you can gain even more trust before trouble times?
No, I think, like, I agree with what you said, that troubled times put your trust to the test. But I also, that's what I was wanting to say. But I also think that you can trust God before the trouble. Matter of fact, please do trust God before the trouble. But also know that trouble's coming that will test your trust. And I'm saying that truth is how we move into trusting God when we're truthful about this situation that we all are born into, which is that we are sinners and we need to be saved by God's grace. And we trust, when we know the truth about who we are, then we can trust the truth about who God is.
All right, so I want to make sure we're together. All right, because we like Run DMC, we tough and leather. We down like 4 flat tires. All right, we need some questions. YouTube, come through with some questions. We are grateful for your questions. We're grateful as we're chatting it up. Y'all know I'm the hype master. I'm like the hype man at the hip hop show. I don't rap. I just hype up the crowd. Come on up, pump it up, boom, boy. All right, that's me. That's my job. And so I'm just a hype person here. And I just throw the questions to Red Maria, and she's so insightful that she helps clean up my stuff and make it look even better. That's good teamwork. She makes it even look even better. She puts arm all on the tires, and I may wash the car, but she puts the arm all on the tires. Put a little potpourri spray in there, make it smell good.
I'm not cleaning cars. Sorry.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Change the metaphor. No.
All right. Got this last question here. We're gonna get out of here. Being that vessel to create togetherness, what is it that we as members, viewers, visitors need to do to try and bring this nation together, despite the fighting going on with the leaders of this nation? Bring that vessel to create togetherness. What is it that we as members, viewers, and visitors need to try to do to bring this nation together, despite the fighting going on with the leaders of this nation? I think a couple things. I think we all have some persons that we disagree with who may live around us. I think it's very important how we treat them. If we were very adversarial, if they had Trump flags waving in front of the house,
you. Synonym.
They had Trump flags
Freudian.
waving in front of the house. If they never spoke. We go out of our way to speak to them. I think that's one way. I think it also goes back to, before we can try to change the world and before we can try to change the nation, we have to deal with the people who are in our sphere of influence, people we work with every day. What do they say about us? We can know. We know that they may be. We may be on opposing political views, but can we come together? Can we agree to disagree, as we said earlier? Can we dialogue? I mean, let's be honest. How many people who we have opposing views with did we go out to lunch with? Outside. Don't go inside. Make sure you got your mask on.
I might wait on lunch a little while.
Okay, well, I mean, we can be outside. You can sit outside.
I might wait on lunch a little while.
You can sit outside. You can sit outside. I think,
unless it's a Zoom lunch, that might work.
Okay.
I could do that.
So I think that's something. I think we got to look at our neighbors and our streets. How many of us even interact with the people who live in our neighborhoods, on our streets? If we live in a high rise, in the hallway, do we even speak? Good morning. Particularly, I mean, how many people do we go out of our way to speak to that we see have Trump shirts on, or Make America Great Again hats?
That's what I do.
But
my Savior says,
thank you.
Come on
back. Come on back. Bring that beat back.
I love myself.
Bring that beat back.
That's what we do. We love the person as we love ourselves. And so, one of the things, because the word love in English has so many broad implications. And it's funny how when we talk about our neighbors and we say love, we want to make love the most intimate possible thing, which makes it that much harder to consider loving our neighbors. But when we are called to love ourselves, treat people the way you want to be treated. That's a good place to start. So you said go out of your way. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it will feel like going out of my way, because what I really want to do is, but when I'm thinking about what I want, what do I want? Acknowledge my humanity and speak. Good morning. And here's the other part of it, because I trust, and I see your question, your comment. So trust and faith goes hand in hand. Absolutely. Trust and faith absolutely go hand in hand, because when I know who God is and I know that I belong to God, there is nothing that anyone else can say or do to shake my position, and really they shouldn't be able to tarnish my opinion of myself. So if I speak to you and I know who I belong to, and you don't speak to me, it shouldn't make me feel less than, because I know who I belong to. So what I probably need to do, rather than taking that as an insult, is viewing that as a deficiency. That poor person has not grown in their relationship enough to be able to even speak. And so I pray for you that you don't have what I have. I want you to have what I have. I want you to have that certainty, that trust in the truth of who God is, and that you can speak just like I can.
I pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive. I won't harm you with words from my mouth.
Sing, Rev.
I love you. I need you to
and not survive. Only are you singing, but you got to get all up in the camera too. Oh my God.
You pray for me.
Go hype man. Go hype man.
I mean, I ain't singing. I can't sing, so stop singing. That's what she's trying to say. All right, y'all. We about to get out of here.
I'm saying you just go and make your joyful noise boldly all up in the camera.
We had a great time at this early service sermon chat. Again, we want to encourage you. We are grateful for you chatting it up with us. As you know, we like to have fun, and we look forward to sharing after the 10 a.m. service. Please, sermon notes are there in the app. Also, I want to encourage you to go back and if you didn't worship with us, to do that. And text someone, invite them to come worship with us at 10 a.m. And we'll be right back here for Sermon Chat Part 2 right after the 10 a.m. service. We look forward to this every Sunday, 7:30, and after the 10 a.m. service. We look forward to having fun with you all. I look forward
to singing with a captive audience.
Messing with y'all, because I just like to mess with y'all, because when I do stuff like that, then y'all just start blowing up the chat. Y'all will be quiet any other time, but y'all just blow up the chat after that. In order for me to get you all hyped, I have to do some things sometimes, like get in the camera and start singing or start dancing, do creep dog, something like that. Just do that. All right. So we've had a great time today. Ooh. And we look forward to sharing with you again. Reverend, you got anything you want to add?
Praise God.
All right. Lord, we thank you
palms.
for this day. In Jesus' name,
in Jesus' name, amen.
I don't care about the face bombs. I'll pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive.
Oh, gosh.
I won't harm you with words